There are moments in life when fate arrives quietly, dressed as a blessing, while carrying a lesson no one is prepared for. This is one of those stories. If you have ever believed that patience always guarantees peace, then listen carefully, because this story will challenge that belief. Her name was Grace Williams, and by the time she reached her late 20s, society had already passed judgment on her. Not openly, of course, but through glances, whispered conversations, and well-meaning advice that cut deeper than insults. Grace lived a respectable life. She was educated, disciplined, and emotionally reserved. She earned enough to live comfortably, though not extravagantly. Her apartment sat among tall buildings, busy streets, and quiet cafes where people hurried past each other every day without looking twice. It was a place where ambition lived, and loneliness too. Marriage had not come early for Grace. As years passed, expectations grew heavier. Friends married, family members asked questions, strangers assumed things. Yet Grace never chased love recklessly. She believed that commitment, once given, should be honored without compromise. That belief would soon be tested. One evening, as city lights reflected off polished streets, a man sat inside a high-end vehicle parked discreetly nearby. He was not lost. He was observing. His name was Richard Coleman. Richard was a man whose success spoke before he did. He had built an empire through patience, calculation, and control. Wealth surrounded him, but companionship did not. He had grown tired of shallow conversations and performative affection. What caught his attention that night was not Grace's appearance alone. It was her consistency, her routine, her restraint. Weeks earlier, he had noticed her at a formal social gathering. While others sought attention, Grace remained composed, purposeful, and detached from unnecessary display. That impression lingered. Quiet curiosity turned into deliberate interest. Richard made inquiries, not recklessly, but discreetly. He learned where she lived, how she worked, and how she carried herself through life. When he finally approached her, it was without arrogance. Their conversations were measured, intelligent, and respectful. Grace was surprised, not by his wealth, but by his seriousness. He did not play games. He spoke of values, trust, and legacy. For Grace, it felt unreal. A man of such status choosing her, not for image, not for convenience, but seemingly for character. The courtship moved swiftly. Richard knew what he wanted. Grace, feeling that her long season of waiting had finally ended, agreed to marriage. The wedding was refined and dignified. No excess, no spectacle, just vows exchanged with confidence and certainty. Grace entered a new world, one of luxury, structure, and privilege beyond anything she had known. For the first time, silence felt expensive. Security felt permanent. But stories like this are never about what is seen in the light. They are about what begins to grow quietly in the dark. And long before the first month ended, something within Grace began to change. The early days of Grace's marriage appeared flawless to anyone watching from the outside. She woke early, managed the household with care, attended social functions when required, and spoke of her husband with polite admiration. Richard, in return, provided generously and treated her with measured respect. Their home was calm, orderly, and quiet, almost too quiet. Yet silence has a way of revealing truths no words ever could. As weeks turned into a month, Grace began to feel restless. The luxury that once thrilled her now felt restrictive. The predictability of her days unsettled her. She had entered marriage expecting fulfillment, but instead found herself confronting an emptiness she had never known. Richard was present, but emotionally distant. Their conversations were formal, their routines precise. Passion was replaced by structure. Rather than communicate her dissatisfaction, Grace chose secrecy. It started subtly. An evening errand, a late meeting with friends, a sudden interest in nightlife she had never expressed before. Grace transformed herself at night, changing her appearance, masking her identity, and stepping into places where anonymity ruled. In dimly lit clubs and private lounges, she became someone else entirely, someone reckless, someone unseen. What began as curiosity evolved into habit. Habit hardened into a double life. Grace convinced herself that no one would ever know. She was careful. She was strategic. She believed she could control the deception just as she managed everything else. Each night she returned home before dawn, removing traces of her absence and slipping back into the role of a devoted wife. But deception always leaves footprints. Richard noticed changes, not dramatic ones, small details that did not align. Grace became guarded with her phone. Her explanations grew rehearsed. Her emotional distance deepened. The woman who once spoke thoughtfully now avoided eye contact. She laughed more easily outside the home, yet carried tension within it. Richard was not a man given to impulse. He observed, he calculated, he waited. Eventually, concern turned into suspicion. Rather than confront Grace directly, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He hired a private investigator, someone trained to see what others overlook. The instruction was simple: follow discreetly, report honestly. For several nights, nothing unusual surfaced. Then patterns emerged: late departures, hidden locations, altered appearances, interactions that did not belong to a married woman who claimed loyalty. The reports were factual, unemotional, and devastating. Photographs confirmed what Richard had feared, but never wanted to believe. Betrayal is not loud when it arrives. It settles quietly in the chest, heavy and irreversible. Richard said nothing at first. He studied Grace across the dinner table. He listened to her excuses. He watched her rehearse lies with effortless confidence. And with each passing day, his silence became more intentional. He was preparing, not for confrontation, but for revelation. Because when truth finally speaks, it does not raise its voice. It simply stands where lies can no longer hide. Grace did not notice the shift at first. Richard remained calm, courteous, and composed. If anything, he became more attentive. He asked about her day with genuine interest. He suggested dinners together. He spoke softly, watched closely, and waited patiently. That patience unsettled Grace more than anger ever could have. One evening, after Grace returned home earlier than usual, Richard invited her to sit with him in the living room. The house was unusually quiet. No background music, no distractions. Just two people seated across from one another, surrounded by wealth that suddenly felt meaningless. Richard poured 2 glasses of wine, but touched neither. "Grace," he said calmly, "do you believe trust is something that can be repaired once it is broken?" The question caught her off guard. She forced a smile and replied cautiously, "I think it depends on the situation." Richard nodded, as if he had expected that answer. He paused, then continued, "And do you believe a person can live 2 lives without eventually losing both?" Grace's chest tightened. She laughed lightly, attempting to deflect the tension. "You're asking very serious questions tonight." "Yes," Richard replied, his voice steady, "because tonight deserves honesty." He stood, walked to a nearby table, and picked up a thin folder. Grace watched his movements closely, her heartbeat growing louder with every step. Richard returned to his seat and placed the folder between them, unopened. "I know where you go at night," he said quietly. "I know who you become. I know what you thought I would never see." Grace's breath caught. For a moment, she considered denial. It had worked before, but something in Richard's eyes told her this moment had already passed judgment. He opened the folder. There were no accusations, no shouting, only evidence, clear, factual, undeniable. Dates, times, places, images that stripped away every excuse Grace had rehearsed. Silence filled the room. Grace's voice finally broke through it. "I can explain." Richard raised his hand gently. "Explanation does not change intention," he said, "and intention defines character." Tears formed in Grace's eyes, not from remorse alone, but from the realization that the life she had carefully balanced was collapsing. She spoke of loneliness, of feeling invisible, of craving freedom. But with every word, it became clear that her choices were deliberate, not accidental. Richard listened without interruption. When she finished, he spoke with finality. "I did not marry you to own you. I married you to trust you. You did not fail because you were unhappy. You failed because you chose deception over honesty." Grace reached for him instinctively, but he stood. "This marriage ends tonight," he said, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Arrangements were made swiftly and privately. There were no public scandals, no dramatic confrontations. Grace was given what was fair, nothing more. As she packed her belongings, the silence she once enjoyed now felt unbearable. Because freedom without integrity is not freedom at all. It is loss disguised as choice. Within days, she left the home she once believed would define her future. Grace returned to the place she once called home, carrying more luggage than she had arrived with years earlier, but far less peace. The familiar streets no longer welcomed her. The faces she recognized now looked at her differently, not because they knew the truth, but because she herself had changed. Wealth had passed through her hands, yet wisdom had not stayed. She rented a small apartment and lived quietly. There were no late nights anymore, no disguises, no double lives, just long evenings filled with reflection and regret. For the first time, Grace was alone with her thoughts, and they were not kind. At first, she blamed Richard. She blamed the silence in their marriage. She blamed the emotional distance. She blamed the structure that made her feel confined. But blame has a way of fading when there is no one left to argue with. Slowly, accountability replaced excuses. Grace began to understand that betrayal does not begin in action, it begins in thought. She had chosen secrecy over communication, thrill over trust, temporary validation over lasting respect. And though no one publicly shamed her, the quiet knowledge of her choices became its own punishment. Months passed. Life settled into routine. Grace found work, reconnected with old acquaintances, and rebuilt a modest existence. Yet something was permanently altered. She was more cautious, more reserved, less trusting of her own impulses. The lessons she ignored before now spoke loudly in her silence. Occasionally, she heard about Richard. His businesses continued to grow. His life remained structured and disciplined. He did not speak of her, and that absence of acknowledgement hurt more than anger ever could. To be removed completely from someone's future is a consequence few anticipate. One evening, Grace sat alone by her window, watching city lights flicker against the dark sky. She reflected on the moment her life had changed. Not the night she was exposed, but the first night she chose deception. That was the true beginning of the end. And for the first time, she whispered words she had avoided for so long. I was wrong. This story is not about wealth or marriage alone. It is about character, about the quiet decisions made when no one is watching, about how opportunity does not excuse betrayal and comfort does not replace integrity. There are people who wait years for blessings they are not prepared to protect. When those blessings arrive, they treat them carelessly, assuming there will always be time to fix what is broken. But some things, once fractured, cannot be restored to their original form. Grace did not lose her marriage because she was lonely. She lost it because she chose dishonesty when honesty was still possible. And Richard did not walk away because he lacked love. He walked away because love without trust is unsustainable. So let this story leave you with this lesson. A double life always demands double payment. What is hidden in darkness eventually asks to be paid in daylight. And no matter how carefully a secret is protected, truth is patient. It always arrives. Every choice has a consequence. Grace learned that too late. If you were in Richard's place, what would you have done? Share your thoughts, and thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.